I'm Arya, I'm 28 years old, and my life has been a masterclass in managing expectations, specifically my family's. The most recent lesson occurred just last week. My mother, after delivering a lecture on the importance of financial self-sufficiency, used my credit card to charge $5,600 for 4 business-class plane tickets to the Maldives. The problem wasn't just the amount, it was the passenger list. It included my mother, my father, my sister, and her boyfriend. My name was conspicuously absent. This was her response to me agreeing to pay for my own $1,400 economy seat. It was the culmination of a lifetime of being told I wasn't quite enough, while simultaneously being expected to foot the bill for those who were. My family operates like a small, dysfunctional solar system. My mother, Carol, is the sun, fiery, demanding, and convinced everything should revolve around her. At 58, she has turned the role of a homemaker into a competitive sport where the prize is social validation. Her world is a carefully curated gallery of appearances, and any scuff on the pristine image of our family is a personal offense. My father, Richard, a 61-year-old corporate lawyer, is the largest planet, held in a tight, predictable orbit by her gravity. He's a man who mistakes silence for strength and authority for affection. He enables my mother's every whim, not out of love, but out of a desire for a quiet life, and he views my career choice with a kind of weary disdain. Then there is Jessica, my 25-year-old sister. She is the Earth of our solar system, the jewel, the favored one, teeming with life and promise in our parents' eyes. She is an aspiring social media influencer, a career path my parents find modern and exciting. Her success is measured in likes and sponsored posts, most of which feature products and vacations that they have paid for. She is the living embodiment of their dreams, and I am, well, I suppose I'm Pluto. Distant, cold, and not really considered a part of the main event anymore. My crime was choosing a different orbit. While Jessica pursued a degree in communications at an expensive private university, a life funded entirely by my parents, I was the quiet, nerdy girl who loved computers. When I announced I was going to study software engineering at a state school, my father had sighed. "Is there a real career in that, Arya? It sounds like a hobby." My mother was more direct. "We can't be expected to pay for that. If you want to play with your little computer games, you'll have to do it on your own." And so I did. I took out student loans. I worked 3 jobs, a barista at dawn, a coder for a small campus lab in the afternoon, and a pizza delivery driver at night. I remember one particularly cold winter evening, my 15-year-old sedan broke down on the side of the road while delivering a pizza. I called my dad, shivering, and asked if he could possibly come and get me. There was a long pause on the line before he said, "Arya, this is the consequence of your choices. A tow truck is a business expense. You need to learn to handle these things." I used my tip money from that night to pay for the tow. A week later, I saw a picture Jessica posted online. She was standing next to a brand new convertible, wrapped in a giant red bow. The caption read, "Best 21st birthday ever. My parents are the most amazing people in the world. Blessed new car." I just stared at the picture, the memory of the freezing cold still clinging to my bones. My little computer hobby eventually turned into a tech startup. I poured every ounce of my energy, every dollar I saved, into building it. For the first few years, it was a grueling, thankless effort. During that time, my family's condescension was at an all-time high. At family dinners, my father would ask, "Still playing with that website of yours?" My mother would pat my hand and say, "Don't worry, dear. When it fails, you can always get a real job, maybe something in administration." But it didn't fail, it succeeded. My company developed a piece of project management software that became indispensable to creative agencies. We secured funding, hired a team, and became profitable. I was finally, unequivocally successful and financially independent in a way I'd never dreamed possible. Yet to my family, the narrative remained unchanged. My success was an anomaly, a fluke. Jessica's sponsored post for a teeth whitening kit was celebrated with a champagne toast, while my company landing its biggest client to date was met with a polite, "Oh, that's nice, dear." They saw my money not as a testament to my hard work, but as a resource they were entitled to. They had sown nothing, but now that the harvest was inexplicably bountiful, they felt it was their right to reap. This is the context you need to understand the phone call that started it all, the call about the family vacation to the Maldives. It wasn't an invitation, it was an invoice. The call came on a Tuesday evening. I was in my office, sketching out a workflow for a new software feature when my mother's name flashed on my screen. I let it ring twice, took a deep breath to fortify myself, and answered with a cheerful, "Hi, Mom." "Arya, darling," she began, her voice dripping with a sweetness that always set my teeth on edge. It was her preamble voice, the one she used before making a request. "I have the most wonderful news. We've decided as a family that we're all going on a trip, a proper one this time." I could hear Jessica squealing in the background. "The Maldives, Arya, can you believe it?" "The Maldives? Wow, that sounds amazing," I said, my voice carefully neutral. I knew what was coming next. "It is," my mother continued, her tone shifting from sweet to businesslike. "Your father and I feel it's important for us to spend quality time together to reconnect. We've found a lovely resort, all-inclusive. Of course, it's not cheap. Quality never is." Here it was, the slow, deliberate approach to the financial runway. "We've booked everything," she said. "The only thing left is the flights. Now, they are a bit steep. We're looking at about $1,400 each for an economy seat." She paused, letting the number hang in the air like a challenge. I remained silent. I could almost see her on the other end of the line, picturing me frantically doing calculations, worrying if I could afford it. It was a test, and my grade would determine my worthiness to participate in family time. "Arya, are you there?" she asked, a hint of impatience in her voice. "I'm here, Mom, $1,400. Okay." Her voice softened again, now layered with practiced condescension. "Now, honey, I know things with your little company can be up and down. Your father and I were just saying we don't want you to feel pressured. If you can't keep up, we'll understand. It's better that you just don't bother coming than to have you resentful about the cost." The word stung, sharp and familiar. If you can't keep up, don't bother coming. It was the family motto, applied exclusively to me. It was the same sentiment from when I couldn't afford the same expensive clothes as Jessica, the same sentiment from when I chose a state school over a private one. For years, I had been running a race I didn't even want to be in, all to prove I could, in fact, keep up. But this time, something inside me felt different. I was tired. Tired of the race, tired of the judgment, tired of the constant, low-level humiliation. A strange sense of calm washed over me. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was just done. "No, it's fine, Mom," I said, my voice even. "I can cover my flight. $1,400 is not a problem." "Oh," there was a flicker of genuine surprise in her voice, quickly masked. "Well, good. That's wonderful. It just makes things so much easier when everyone pulls their own weight." The irony of that statement was so thick I could have choked on it. Jessica, who had never pulled her own weight a day in her life, was no doubt getting a free ride, courtesy of the bank of Mom and Dad. "So," my mother said, her voice now brisk and efficient, "to make sure we're all on the same flight, I can book your ticket along with ours. I'll just need your credit card details." A red flag went up, a giant, waving banner in my mind. I never gave them my financial information. It was a hard and fast rule born from years of smaller monetary disputes. But in that moment, I hesitated. Arguing would lead to a fight. It would be another drama, another round of them telling Jessica how difficult I was. Maybe this time it would be different. Maybe if I just complied, if I showed trust, they would see me as an adult, an equal. It was a foolish, hopeful thought. "Okay," I said slowly. "Are you ready?" "Go ahead, darling." With a sense of impending doom, I read out the numbers. My card number, the expiration date, the security code. "This is for one economy ticket in my name, Arya, for $1,400. Correct?" I asked, trying to lock her into a verbal contract. "Yes, yes, of course," she said dismissively. "Got it. I'll send you the confirmation once it's all booked. We're so excited. This is going to be the best trip ever." We hung up and I sat in the silence of my office, the hum of my computer a lonely sound. I felt a knot in my stomach. I had just handed over the keys to a kingdom I had built with my own 2 hands, and I had a terrible feeling that I had just given them to a queen who saw it as her right to burn it all down. For a moment, I considered calling the bank and putting a temporary freeze on the card, but I talked myself out of it. I was being paranoid. This was a family vacation. What was the worst that could happen? The next 24 hours were a blur of work. I dove headfirst into a complex coding problem, the kind of immersive challenge that silences the nagging anxieties of the outside world. My startup was my sanctuary, a place where logic reigned and effort was directly proporty. Onal to reward, the exact opposite of my family life. I almost managed to forget the uneasy feeling the phone call had left behind. The illusion was shattered the following afternoon. I was in a meeting with my development team when my phone buzzed on the table. It was a notification from my credit card app, the one I had configured to alert me to any charge over $1,000. I glanced down, expecting to see a pending charge for the agreed-upon $1,400. The notification read, "Charge authorized, $5,600 at Oceanic Airlines." I blinked. My brain struggled to process the numbers. $5,600, that was impossible. It had to be a mistake. Maybe my mom had accidentally bought a refundable ticket or something. I excused myself from the meeting, my heart starting to thrum against my ribs with a low, heavy beat. "I'll be right back," I mumbled, walking out of the conference room and down the hall to my office. I closed the door behind me and immediately opened the credit card app. My hands were trembling slightly as I navigated to the recent transactions. There it was, clear as day. A posted charge, not pending, $5,600. I clicked on the transaction details, a cold dread washing over me. The charge was for 4 tickets. 4, not 1. I scanned the details, looking for my name on the itinerary. It wasn't there. The passenger names were listed plainly: Richard, Carol, Jessica, and a 4th name that made my blood run cold: Chad, Jessica's boyfriend of 6 months. They hadn't booked my ticket. They had used my money, 4 times the amount I had authorized, to book tickets for themselves and for Jessica's latest fling, a guy I had met exactly twice. And they hadn't just booked economy seats. I tapped into the e-receipt attached to the transaction. The words leaped off the screen, mocking me. "Seat class, business." I sank into my office chair, the air leaving my lungs in a silent whoosh. They had not only stolen from me, but they had also done it with such breathtaking arrogance. The sheer audacity of it was staggering. My mother's words echoed in my head. "If you can't keep up, don't bother coming." They had decided I couldn't keep up with their business-class lifestyle, so they had simply taken my money and left me behind. They hadn't even had the decency to tell me. They were just going to let me wait for a confirmation email that would never arrive. The initial shock quickly curdled into a feeling of profound foolishness. I had trusted them. Against all evidence, against years of experience, a small, hopeful part of me believed that this time might be different. That part of me was now shriveled and dead. The hurt was sharp and deep, a physical ache in my chest. It wasn't about the money. I could afford $5,600. It was about the utter lack of respect, the casual cruelty of their deception. It was the final, irrefutable proof that I was not a daughter to them. I was a resource, an ATM that they felt entitled to withdraw from at will. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at the screen, the numbers burning into my retinas. The hurt began to recede, replaced by something else. A feeling I hadn't allowed myself to truly experience in years, pure, unadulterated anger. It was a cold, quiet anger, a clarifying anger. The kind that burns away fog and confusion, leaving behind only the hard, sharp edges of reality. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't an accident. This was a deliberate act of theft and exclusion. It was the culmination of every small slight, every condescending remark, Every time I was made to feel like an outsider in my own family. And in that moment of cold clarity, I knew one thing for certain. I was not going to let them get away with it. The race was over. The rules had changed, and I was about to right them. My first instinct was to call my mother and scream, to demand an explanation, to unleash the torrent of betrayal and anger that was churning inside me. But as I reached for my phone, I stopped. What would that accomplish? It would descend into a shouting match. She would deny, deflect, and gaslight me. She would twist my anger into hysteria, my valid grievance into an overreaction. My father would get on the line and tell me to be reasonable, and my sister would send me a text message full of emojis, telling me to just chill out for the sake of the family. I would be the villain of the story, the difficult one who was ruining their perfect vacation plans. No, I wasn't going to play their game anymore. I was going to play mine by my rules. I took a few deep, steadying breaths, my anger solidifying from a hot, chaotic mess into a cool, sharp instrument. I didn't text. I didn't call. I acted. My first call was not to my family, but to the fraud department of my credit card company. I was put on hold, listening to a tinny, instrumental version of a pop song I vaguely recognized. The mundane music was a stark contrast to the storm in my chest. When a representative finally came on the line, a friendly-sounding woman named Maria, my voice was unnervingly calm. "Hello," I began. "I need to report a fraudulent charge on my account." "Of course," Maria said patiently. "Can you tell me the amount and the merchant?" "The charge is for $5,600 from Oceanic Airlines." "All right, I see it here," she confirmed. "Can you explain why you believe it's fraudulent?" "Yesterday evening, I authorized a single charge from this merchant over the phone," I explained, my voice level and firm. "The authorization was for one plane ticket in my name for a specific amount, $1,400. The charge that was processed is for $5,600, and it is for 4 tickets, none of which are for me. This was done without my knowledge or consent." There was a moment of silence on the other end, followed by the sound of typing. "I see," Maria said, her tone now more serious. "So you authorized a payment, but the amount was changed and the goods were not for you. That is absolutely considered fraud." Hearing her validate my experience, to call it what it was, fraud, was like a dam breaking. The last vestiges of self-doubt washed away. I wasn't overreacting. I was a victim of a crime. "What are the next steps?" I asked. "I'm freezing the account immediately to prevent any further unauthorized charges," she explained. "We'll issue you a new card. As for the charge itself, I'm opening an official dispute. The $5,600 will be credited back to your account pending the investigation. We will contact the merchant, Oceanic Airlines, and inform them that the payment was fraudulent. In most cases, this means the services purchased. The tickets will be immediately invalidated." "Invalidated," I repeated the word, savoring it. "So, the tickets will be canceled." "Yes, that's standard procedure," Maria confirmed. "The investigation can take a few weeks, but you are not liable for the charge." "Thank you, Maria," I said, a wave of profound relief washing over me. "You have no idea how much I appreciate this." After hanging up, I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. It was done. The gears of consequence were now in motion, and there was nothing my family could do to stop them. A feeling of lightness and liberation filled me. It was as if a massive weight I didn't even realize I was carrying had been lifted from my shoulders. The weight of their expectations, their judgment, their constant financial and emotional blackmail. For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly free. And with that freedom came a question: what did I want to do? The money for the Maldives trip was technically back in my budget. I had set it aside, prepared to spend it on a vacation I didn't even really want, just to keep the peace. But there was no peace to keep anymore. The money was mine. My time was mine. I opened my laptop, but instead of returning to my work files, I opened a web browser. The cursor blinked on the search bar, waiting. Where do I want to go? I thought. The Maldives felt tainted now, a symbol of their betrayal. I wanted something else. Something for me. Something unapologetically, ridiculously luxurious. A place so over the top that it would make their business class ambitions look quaint. A name popped into my head: Dubai. I typed it in. Images of futuristic skylines, impossible architecture, and opulent hotels filled my screen. My eyes landed on a picture of the Burj Al Arab, its iconic sail-like structure a testament to architectural ambition. I clicked on it. I browsed the suites, each one more incredible than the last. I found one called the Panoramic Suite, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a 180-degree view of the city and the Arabian Gulf. The price tag was astronomical. For a 5-night stay, it was just over $9,000. It was more money than I had ever spent on something so frivolous. The old Arya, the one who was always saving, always being practical, always trying to justify her existence, screamed in protest. But the new Arya, the one who had just stood up for herself, whispered back, "You earned this. This isn't their money. This is yours." I looked at the dates of the canceled Maldives trip. I looked at the booking calendar for the hotel in Dubai. The same week was available. My heart pounded, but this time it was with excitement, not dread. With a steady hand, I selected the dates, filled in my details, using my new, soon-to-be-issued credit card number, and hovered the mouse over the Confirm Booking button. This was more than just a vacation. It was a declaration of independence. I clicked it. A confirmation page loaded, complete with a reservation number and a polite, "We look forward to welcoming you." I leaned back, a genuine, unburdened laugh bubbling up from my chest. My family thought they were flying business class to the Maldives on my dime. They had no idea that while they would soon be grounded, I was the one who was about to soar. The week leading up to my trip, and my family's doomed vacation, was one of the most peaceful I'd had in years. The silence from their end was absolute. No calls, no texts, not even a forwarded email with a flight confirmation, which only proved they never had any intention of including me. They were stewing in their own self-satisfaction, completely oblivious to the fact that their grand plan had already been dismantled. I, on the other hand, was basking in a newfound sense of serenity. I threw myself into preparing for Dubai. I bought a new suitcase, a few elegant outfits suitable for fine dining, and a high SPF sunscreen. Every purchase felt like a small act of rebellion, a vote for my own happiness. When the new credit card arrived, I activated it and tucked it safely into my wallet. It was a clean slate, in more ways than one. The day they were supposed to depart, I woke up feeling light and giddy. I imagined them packing their bags, Carol meticulously folding Richard's shirts, Jessica agonizing over which bikinis would get the most likes on Instagram. I pictured them loading their luggage into a car service, chattering excitedly about the turquoise waters and white sand beaches awaiting them. The dramatic irony was almost too delicious. I spent the day at home, leisurely packing my own suitcase. I laid out a silk dress, a pair of sandals, and the novel I'd been meaning to read for months. Around 3 p.m., my phone, which had been blissfully quiet, buzzed on my nightstand. I picked it up. It was a text from Jessica. "JSSICA, AT the airport. Our tickets aren't working." I smiled. The curtain was rising on the final act. I placed the phone back on the nightstand and continued to fold a linen shirt. I didn't need to reply just yet. The pot needed to simmer. 5 minutes later, it buzzed again, and again. "JESSICA, they're saying the reservation doesn't exist. Mom is talking to the manager. This is so embarrassing." "JESSICA, WTF Arya. They said the payment was disputed and the tickets were canceled days ago. What did you do?" Her tone had shifted from confusion to accusation. Of course, it had. In our family's universe, any disruption to their comfort was, by default, my fault. I picked up the phone. Her name was now flashing on the screen. She was calling me. I silenced it. Then my mother's name appeared. I silenced that too. Then my father's. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. I looked at Jessica's last text. "What did you do?" I thought for a moment, then typed out a simple, 2-word reply. "Arya upgraded my plans. I hit send, then put my phone on silent. I didn't want to be bothered by the inevitable explosion. I could picture the scene at the Oceanic Airlines check-in counter perfectly. My mother, her face a mask of indignation, making a scene. My father, standing stiffly beside her, trying to use his lawyerly gravitas on a beleaguered airline employee who just wanted to get through their shift. And Jessica, filming the whole thing for her Instagram story, a drama she could monetize later, all while blaming me for her humiliation. The thought didn't fill me with guilt. It filled me with a sense of profound, cosmic justice. They had built this moment themselves, brick by fraudulent brick. I had simply refused to hold up the structure for them any longer. I finished packing my bag, zipped it shut, and stood it by the door. My own flight wasn't until late that night. I had hours of peace ahead of me. I made myself a cup of tea, sat down with my book, and for the first time, the silence in my apartment didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like victory. The hours passed in a tranquil haze. I ordered dinner, watched a movie, and double-checked that I had my passport and booking confirmation for my Dubai hotel. My phone remained on silent, though I could see the screen light up periodically with notifications of missed calls and angry-sounding text previews. I ignored them all. They were ghosts from a life I was in the process of leaving behind. Around 9 p.m., just as I was getting ready to call a car to take me to the airport, a loud, aggressive pounding echoed through my apartment. It wasn't the polite knock of a neighbor or a delivery person. It was the sound of pure, unadulterated rage. My heart leaped into my throat for a second before I calmed myself. I knew who it was. I walked to the door and peered through the peephole. The distorted lens showed my father's face, red and contorted with fury. But he wasn't alone. Standing slightly behind him, with a look of smug professionalism, was another man in a dark, expensive suit. He was holding a leather briefcase. My father had brought a lawyer. I had to suppress a laugh. It was so perfectly, predictably him. When his authority failed, he outsourced it. When his anger wasn't enough, he brought in a legal mercenary. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and unlocked the deadbolt. I opened the door. My father, Richard, looked as if he was about to explode. His eyes were narrowed, and a vein pulsed in his temple. "Arya," he spat out my name like it was a curse. The other man stepped forward slightly, extending a hand. "Arya, I'm Jonathan Crane. I'm your father's legal counsel." I ignored his hand. "I know who my father is," I said, my voice cold. "I assume you're the other lawyer." Jonathan Crane's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Your father has retained me to deal with this unfortunate situation." "You have deliberately, maliciously embarrassed this family," my father cut in, his voice shaking with anger. "You backed out of a financial commitment, and you sabotaged a trip that was meant to bring us all together. Do you have any idea the scene you caused at that airport?" "I have some idea," I said calmly. "I imagine it was quite dramatic. Mom does love an audience." His face darkened further. "This is not a joke. You committed to paying your share. When you reneged, you left us in an impossible position. You owe us that money, Arya. You owe us $5,600, and Mr. Crane is here to ensure that you pay it. In fact, we're also going to be seeking compensation for the non-refundable hotel booking in the Maldives that we have now lost because of you, not to mention damages for the emotional distress and public humiliation." He delivered the speech like he was making a closing argument in a courtroom. It was designed to intimidate, to overwhelm, to make me crumble. But I wasn't the scared young girl anymore, the one who would burst into tears at his raised voice. I was a woman who had built a company from nothing. I had faced down venture capitalists and hostile competitors. His blustering was nothing compared to that. I looked from my father's furious face to the lawyer's confident smirk. They stood there in my doorway, two imposing men in suits, expecting me to shrink. "Would you like to come in?" I asked, my tone polite. It seemed to throw them off. "We're not here for tea," my father snapped. "We're here for the money you owe us." "I understand that," I said, my voice still even. "But I think before we discuss money, Mr. Crane, as an officer of the court, might be interested in reviewing some pertinent documentation I've prepared. It might clarify the unfortunate situation considerably. I left the door open and walked over to my desk. I picked up a slim manila folder. My heart was beating steadily now, a calm and powerful rhythm. This was my courtroom, and I was ready. I walked back to the doorway and held out the folder, not to my father, but directly to his lawyer. "Mr. Crane," I said, my voice clear and steady, "perhaps you'd like to see this." He hesitated for a moment, glancing at my father, who just glowered at me. With a shrug, the lawyer took the folder. He opened it, his expression a mixture of condescension and curiosity. I watched his face as he began to read. It was a more satisfying performance than any movie I could have watched. The first document on top was a printout of the text message exchange between my mother and me. I had highlighted my own words. "This is for one economy ticket in my name, Arya, for $1,400. Correct?" And her reply, "Yes, yes, of course." Mr. Crane's eyebrows twitched. He flipped to the next page. It was the official credit card statement. I had used a highlighter again, this time on the charge for $5,600 from Oceanic Airlines. Next to it, I had placed a sticky note. "Charge unauthorized. Amount is 4x agreed upon total." He flipped the page again. This was the document I was proudest of. Before the airline had fully canceled the booking, I had managed to get a customer service agent to email me the official itinerary attached to the charge. I had printed it in full color. There, under the heading Passenger Manifest, were the 4 names, Carol, Richard, Jessica, and Chad, and next to each name in black and white, "Seat class, business." My name was nowhere to be found. The lawyer's confident smirk was gone now, replaced by a deep furrow in his brow. He looked up at my father with a flicker of confusion, then back down at the papers. The final document was the crown jewel, a copy of the official fraud report I had filed with the bank, complete with a case number and the name of the agent I had spoken to, Maria. The report clearly stated that the cardholder, me, had reported the transaction as fraudulent, initiated by a known party who had been given the card details for a different, smaller, specific purchase. Mr. Crane closed the folder slowly. The silence was heavy. He lifted his gaze from the documents and looked at my father. His professional mask was gone, replaced by an expression of pure, unadulterated alarm. "Richard," the lawyer said, his voice a low, urgent whisper, "this is not what you described to me. This is not a simple case of reneging on a verbal agreement." My father looked bewildered. "What are you talking about, Jonathan?" She agreed. "To pay, it's all there." "No," Mr. Crane said, shaking his head and taking a small step back, as if to physically distance himself from my father. He lowered his voice even further, but I could still hear every word. "Based on this documentation, your daughter is the victim of credit card fraud. She authorized one charge. Your wife, it appears, processed a completely different one for her own benefit. That's a crime, Richard. If you pursue this, if you try to sue her for this money, she can countersue. Or worse, she could file a police report. Based on these documents, she would win. You and Carol could be the ones facing serious legal and financial consequences." The color drained from my father's face. He stared at the lawyer, then at me, his mouth opening and closing silently. The anger in his eyes was replaced by a dawning, horrified understanding. He had walked in here with a cannon, only to find I was holding a nuclear warhead, and he had been standing right at ground zero. He had been so blinded by his own entitlement and rage that he had never once considered that I might have evidence, that I might be right. The lawyer, Mr. Crane, now looked at me with a newfound, almost fearful respect. He cleared his throat. "My apologies for the intrusion, Ms. Arya," he said, his tone formal and stiff. He handed the folder back to me. "We will not be pursuing this matter any further." He then turned to my father, who still seemed to be in a state of shock. "Richard, we are leaving, now." The lawyer turned on his heel and walked swiftly toward the elevators. My father stood frozen for another second, his entire world reordering itself behind his eyes. He gave me one last look, a complex, unreadable expression of defeat, shame, and perhaps for the first time, a sliver of fear. Then, without another word, he turned and followed his lawyer, a humbled, broken man. I closed the door, leaning my back against it, and let out a long, slow breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It was over, truly, finally over. I looked at my suitcase, waiting patiently by the door. I looked at my watch. It was time to go. I picked up my bag, walked out of my apartment, and didn't look back. A few hours later, I was seated in my own spacious airplane seat, one I had paid for myself, sipping sparkling water as the lights of the city twinkled below. I wasn't just flying to Dubai. I was flying towards a future I was building for myself, on my own terms. A future where I was the one who decided if I could keep up, because I was the only one setting the pace. And for the first time, I felt no need to race at all. For the YouTube audience, I'm sharing this not to gloat, but because I know there are others out there who have been made to feel small by the people who should have made them feel the biggest. It took me 28 years to realize that you can't earn respect from people who are determined not to give it. You can't win a game that's rigged against you. The only move is to stop playing. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is to take your money, your energy, and your heart, and invest it all in yourself. You have to be your own champion, book your own luxury suite, and choose your own destination. So, to anyone who has ever been told they can't keep up, maybe you're not meant to. Maybe you're meant to fly higher, on a completely different flight path. After listening to today's story, perhaps it has raised some new questions in your mind. Every day on Reddit, new experiences and moments create fresh stories. We are all human, navigating complex relationships and challenging situations. If you enjoyed this story, feel free to share it with someone who might appreciate it. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to keep an eye out for more stories coming soon.